My name is Elise Navarro. I'm 52 years old, and lately, I've been waking up in the middle of the night with this tightness in my chest, like I'm grieving something I can't name. Or maybe I know exactly what it is and I just don't want to say it out loud. It's been 25 years since I left Daniel. And I still don't understand why he won't talk to me. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've turned it over 1,000 times in my head. People think I'm the villain. Maybe I am. But what they don't see, what no one ever really sees, is how a woman can disappear inside a life that looks perfect from the outside. Daniel and I got married when I was 24. I remember how he used to kiss my forehead in the mornings, still groggy, with his arm curled around my waist like I was something precious. We lived in this little brick house just outside Charleston, with peeling shutters and a kitchen too small for 2 people to cook in, and we used to bump hips on purpose, just to laugh. It wasn't glamorous. But it felt like home. I used to think we were lucky. We had 5 beautiful kids over the course of 13 years. I'd see him holding our newborns, one arm cradling them while the other flipped pancakes, and my heart would ache in that good, full way. He was gentle with them. With me, too. But somewhere between ballet recitals and dentist appointments, something shifted. Or maybe it started sooner and I just didn't want to see it. It was little things at first. A kiss goodnight that felt rushed. My hand on his chest, met with a half smile but no pull closer. We'd lie in bed, our backs a breath apart, neither of us speaking. I used to roll over and tuck myself against him, like muscle memory, and he'd hold me, but it felt more like an old habit than desire. There were nights I wanted more. Not just sex, though yes, that too. I wanted to be seen. To be wanted in that primal, aching way I used to feel with him. I'd wear that perfume he loved, slip into the shower when he was shaving, hoping maybe he'd look at me like he used to. But more often than not, he'd kiss my shoulder and say, "Don't stay up too late," and that was that. I told myself it was just the season we were in. 5 kids. Full-time jobs. Exhaustion. Of course the fire would dim. But it wasn't just the passion, it was the silence. We stopped talking about anything that mattered. Conversations turned into logistics. Who's picking up Ethan from soccer? Whether we should fix the dishwasher or just replace it. Even our arguments lost their heat. He stopped fighting for things. For me. I started to feel like wallpaper. Useful. Familiar. But invisible. And I hated myself for wanting more. It's a strange kind of loneliness, the kind that happens inside a house full of people who love you. You feel ungrateful for aching. You feel selfish for wanting your body to be more than a vessel for motherhood. For needing touch that isn't duty, words that aren't routine. I remember the exact moment I knew something had broken. It was a Tuesday night, one of those sticky Carolina summers. I'd made peach cobbler, his favorite, and the kids had already gone to bed. I set a slice in front of him at the kitchen table, hoping maybe we could sit and talk, just us. He took a bite, barely looked up. "This is good," he said. I smiled. "It's your favorite." "Yeah," he replied. Then he got up, rinsed his plate, and said, "Gonna finish that project in the garage before bed." No kiss. No thank you. No eye contact. Just gone. I sat there in the quiet, the spoon still in my hand, watching the steam curl from the cobbler. And I felt this slow, heavy ache spread through my chest. Not from anger. Not even from heartbreak. But from the realization that I didn't know when I'd stopped being his person. And I couldn't remember the last time I'd been truly wanted. That was the night I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. I was still Elise, mother, wife, daughter, but there was a hollowness behind my eyes. A flicker of something buried. Something unfinished. And somewhere inside me, a voice whispered, there has to be more than this. That was the beginning. The first crack in the dam. And I know how it sounds. That I left him. That I walked away from our kids, our life. That I chose someone else. But it wasn't that simple. It never is. And even now, all these years later, I still wonder what might have happened if he'd just turned around in that doorway and looked at me. Daniel was a high school history teacher, the kind students remembered years after graduation. He had that warm, steady energy, always patient, always listening. To them, anyway. He coached JV basketball on the side, brought home funny anecdotes about hormonal teenagers and last-minute essays. People loved him. They still do. That's part of what made it all harder, knowing the man I felt so distant from was the same one everyone else found so lovable. At home, Daniel showed his affection through acts. He'd gas up my car without saying a word. Fix the leaky faucet before I even had a chance to ask. On weekends, he'd bring me coffee in bed, black, just how I liked it, and rub my feet while we watched the kids play on the lawn. It should have been enough. I told myself that over and over. But somewhere deep down, I wanted something he couldn't name, and I didn't know how to explain. One Saturday morning, I remember sitting on the porch swing with him, the air still thick from the storm the night before. He reached over, brushed my thigh with his fingers, and leaned in to kiss my neck. I flinched, not because it hurt, but because it felt off. He paused. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Just tired. He didn't ask again. Just gave me a gentle squeeze on the knee and turned back toward the yard, watching the kids build a mud fort. The thing was, I wanted to be touched. But not like that. Not like a checkbox on a list of marital duties. I wanted him to look me in the eye and ask how I was, to listen like he did with his students. I wanted to say I felt like I was drowning in invisible work and never heard, but I didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was blaming him. So I said nothing. Later that evening, we were folding laundry together. He was humming that old Simon and Garfunkel song under his breath, and I was matching socks with robotic precision. You've been quiet lately, he said, not looking up. I hesitated. Just a lot on my mind. He nodded, still folding. You want me to give you a back rub later? Help you relax? I swallowed the lump in my throat. That's not what I need. He stopped folding. Okay. Then what do you need? It came out sharper than he meant it to, I think. But I froze. Because I didn't have an answer that would land cleanly between I miss you and I'm suffocating. I forced a smile. It's fine. I'm just tired. That was my line. It became my shield. Over the next few months, Daniel kept trying, in his own way. He'd come up behind me while I was cooking, wrap his arms around my waist, press his lips to my temple. But it felt like a pattern, like a reflex. Not a spark. And maybe that was my fault. Maybe I trained him to keep it safe. But I wanted him to notice how I hesitated before leaning in. How I stopped initiating. How my body tensed when he touched me in the dark without saying anything first. Instead, he started taking it personally. One night, we were in bed. He reached for me under the covers, tracing circles on my hip. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket tighter. Elise, he murmured, his voice low, when did we stop? I stared at the wall, unsure whether to answer or pretend I was asleep. He let out a long breath and rolled away. The silence stretched for weeks after that. We still parented. Still packed lunches and attended school plays and texted each other grocery lists. But something was cracking beneath the surface, something neither of us could name without setting the whole thing ablaze. There was one day, one ordinary, nothing special Tuesday, when I walked into the kitchen and found a bouquet of yellow tulips on the counter. My favorite. I knew it was Daniel. No card, no note. Just the gesture. My eyes welled up unexpectedly. I stood there, hand on the sink, blinking back tears. Not because I didn't appreciate the flowers. But because I realized, he was still trying. He was just trying in the only language he knew. And I wasn't speaking it anymore. I wanted conversation. Connection. I wanted him to ask me how I felt about turning 40, or whether I still dreamed about going back to school, or why I started sleeping with the baby monitor on even after our youngest outgrew it. But he gave me flowers. And I didn't know how to tell him I needed more, without breaking his heart. So I kissed his cheek that night, softly. And then I cried quietly into my pillow while he slept. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight coming in through the kitchen windows in soft gold ribbons, the smell of pancakes hanging in the air. The kids were still asleep, a rare silence in our house, and Daniel stood behind me at the stove, coffee in one hand, watching the griddle with that half-awake calm he always had. "Smells amazing," he said, sliding an arm around my waist. His hand drifted a little lower, playful, familiar. I tensed. Just a second. A flinch so small I almost convinced myself it didn't happen. But he felt it. I know he did. His hand stilled, and then he took a step back, sipping his coffee like nothing had happened. I focused on flipping the pancakes, suddenly too aware of the shirt sticking to my back, the way my hair smelled like last night's dinner. I hadn't showered. I didn't feel desirable. I didn't feel anything. He tried again later, in the laundry room of all places. I was pulling warm towels from the dryer, stacking them on the basket, when he came in, closed the door behind him, and leaned in close. "God, I love how you smell," he murmured, lips brushing against my neck. I froze. That feeling again, like I'd stepped out of my own body and left only obligation behind. "Daniel, not now," I muttered, stepping away. He blinked, hurt flashing across his face. "I'm just trying. I miss touching you." I turned to fold another towel. "There's a time and place. The laundry room, isn't it?" "Then when?" he asked quietly. I didn't have an answer. I didn't want to hurt him, but the truth was, I couldn't remember the last time I wanted to be touched without immediately calculating what it might lead to. A hug became a prelude. A kiss meant expectation. Every caress was laced with pressure. That night, we sat on the couch, a sitcom murmuring in the background. He pulled me against him, his arm draped across my shoulders. I leaned in because that's what I used to do. I even rested my head on his chest. But my body wasn't soft. I wasn't melting into him. I was performing comfort. He kissed the top of my head. I closed my eyes, searching for that warm flicker that used to follow. Nothing. I couldn't stop thinking about the way his fingers lingered on my shoulder. The way his thumb grazed the top of my breast just barely, not inappropriate, but not accidental either. My body didn't react. Or rather, it did, with dread. A laugh track rang out from the TV. I sat up quickly, brushing my hair behind my ear like I needed air. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just stiff," I said, smiling too quickly. "Neck's all tight." He reached out instinctively to massage it, but I flinched before I could stop myself. Again. "Elise," he said, voice trailing. "Talk to me." But what could I say? I wanted to want him. I wanted to go back to the days when I'd lean into his touch, when my body would light up at his kiss, when I felt like his. But now, even the sweetest gestures felt like ticking clocks. Every touch was the beginning of a countdown to intimacy I couldn't give. And then, like a whisper in the back of my head, the thought came again, raw, sharp, and uninvited. It was our anniversary. 20 years. Daniel made a reservation at that Italian place downtown, the one we hadn't been to since before the twins were born. He even wore the navy button-down I liked, the one that made his shoulders look broad and his eyes look impossibly kind. I wore a dress. A real one. Not a sundress or something with a stain I hoped no one noticed, an actual silk dress I'd bought on a whim 6 months ago and never had the nerve to wear. We were doing it. The whole thing. A night out, just us. No sippy cups. No schedules. The table was candlelit. He ordered a bottle of wine. We even laughed, early on, about how long it had been since we'd eaten food that didn't come in a box. And for a moment, I thought, maybe this will be the reset. Maybe we'll find each other again. But hope can be cruel when it's thin. Halfway through the meal, he reached across the table and took my hand. "You look beautiful tonight, Lise." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Something in my stomach twisted. "I've missed this," he said softly. "I know," I replied. I could already feel the edges of myself fraying. "I was thinking," he hesitated, squeezing my hand. "Maybe we could take a weekend away. Just the two of us. Get a cabin, sleep in. Reconnect." The word hung in the air. Reconnect. I nodded, but my throat was closing. Because I knew what he meant. It wasn't just about time alone. It was about us. About the part of us I couldn't access anymore, no matter how hard I tried. And then he said it. Smiling, sincere. "I miss being close to you, Elise." That's when it happened. I pulled my hand back too quickly. The wine glass wobbled. The clink of silverware from nearby tables faded under the rush of heat rising in my chest. "Do you only miss the sex?" I asked, sharper than I meant to. His smile faltered. "That's not what no, it's fine," I cut in, voice already rising. "I get it. You miss touching me. You miss what I used to give you." "Elise, that's not fair. Isn't it?" My voice cracked. "Because every time you touch me lately, I feel like I'm being asked to perform some version of myself I can't find anymore." People were looking now. A waiter paused near the kitchen, pretending not to listen. Daniel leaned forward, voice low. "Let's not do this here." "Why not?" "You made the reservation. You planned the perfect night. Might as well ruin it properly." He stared at me, jaw tight. "I don't understand what I'm doing wrong." "I don't know." I snapped, tears spilling. "That's the problem. I don't know why I don't want to be touched. I don't know why everything feels so heavy. I look at you, and I remember the man I fell in love with, and I wonder why I can't reach him anymore." He looked wounded, like I'd punched him. "So it's me, then?" "No," I whispered. "It's me." The silence between us was brutal. We finished the meal in a daze, barely speaking. He paid, walked me to the car, opened the door like a gentleman. But he didn't touch me again. Not that night. Not for weeks. When we got home, I sat on the edge of the bed, heels still on, makeup smeared with tears. I watched the soft shadows of the room and tried to steady my breathing. I'd ruined everything. He was trying. He was doing exactly what everyone says men don't do, planning dates, expressing feelings, reaching for connection. And I'd snapped. Not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't recognize the woman he was trying to love. Why can't I just want him? I thought, burying my face in my hands. Why is touch the first thing to go when you feel unseen? I curled under the comforter, dress still on, and stared at the ceiling until my eyes blurred. And somewhere in that dark, private pit of shame and confusion, the title of my own choices came back to me like a slap. I left him and our 5 kids for someone who made me feel alive. And 25 years later, he still won't talk to me. But back then, on that anniversary night, I didn't know I'd leave. I didn't know there would be someone else. All I knew was that I was already disappearing. And I didn't know how to tell the man I once loved with everything in me, that I couldn't find my way back. The days after our anniversary passed like winter light, dull, dim, and distant. We still lived under the same roof. Still packed lunches for the kids. Still co-managed the after-school chaos of homework and bath time. But between Daniel and me, there was only cold. Not anger. Not even resentment anymore. Just silence. The kind of silence that follows a loud, painful moment. The kind you don't break easily. He stopped reaching for me. No more brushes of fingertips along my shoulder as he passed behind me in the kitchen. No more kisses on my forehead before he left for work. No more lazy Sunday cuddles on the couch while the kids played under blankets. He wasn't punishing me, at least not deliberately. He was protecting himself. And I could see it. That quiet pull inward. The way he started lingering in the garage a little longer at night, tinkering with old projects that didn't need fixing. The way he answered my questions with a simple, yeah, or, okay, his voice flat, eyes elsewhere. The way his laughter at the kids' jokes never quite reached his eyes. He looked tired. Not physically. Daniel was still strong, still upright, still teaching and coaching and parenting. But emotionally? He was somewhere far away. One night, I watched him from the kitchen as he stood on the porch with a cup of tea, looking out into the backyard. It was late. The kids were asleep. I could see the soft slope of his shoulders, the way his hand cradled the mug like he didn't want to let go of even that small warmth. I wanted to go to him. To say something. Anything. But what? I'm sorry. I'm broken. Please try to love me even when I can't love you the same way right now. The words stuck in my throat. Instead, I rinsed the dishes and went to bed before he came in. That became our rhythm. Avoidance masquerading as routine. Once, I found his journal on the nightstand. I'd never read it before. It was sacred space. But something in me, call it desperation, call it cowardice, opened it anyway. Only one entry since our fight. October 19th, I miss her. And I miss myself around her. I don't know how to be close to someone who pulls away every time I try. I feel like I'm walking around with my hands tied, trying not to make things worse. Maybe I already have. I'm trying to understand what she needs. But I don't know if I'm still the man who can give it to her. I shut the journal gently, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. Daniel wasn't cruel. He wasn't clueless. He was hurting. And he was still trying, in the quietest, most dignified way he knew how. And me? I was trapped in my own body, missing a man I could no longer reach without first climbing over the barricades I'd built inside myself. I missed him. God, I missed him. I missed the way he used to light up when I walked into a room. The way we used to laugh until our sides ached, sprawled out on the floor of our first apartment, sharing a single bowl of pasta. I missed the way his hand used to feel like home in mine. I even missed the weight of him in bed beside me, the sound of his breath softening as he drifted off, safe, trusting, completely at ease. And I hated myself for killing that ease. But I also knew this wasn't just about Daniel. Or sex. Or even love. It was about me. About how I'd let myself slip into a version of womanhood that revolved entirely around being needed, by the kids, by the house, by the routine, and forgot to ask if I needed anything in return. I'd buried my desires, my voice, my creativity under 1,000 invisible responsibilities. And when I finally felt empty, I blamed the person closest to me. He wasn't the villain. Neither was I. We were just two good people lost in a maze of unmet needs and silent fears. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling while Daniel breathed steadily beside me. Not touching. Not even facing me. And I asked myself the hardest question: do I want to fight for this? The truth? Yes. I didn't know how, not yet. I didn't even know if I could ever feel the same again. But I knew this: I didn't want to give up without trying. Not on him. Not on us. Not on the life we had built with so much care. So I turned onto my side. I looked at the shape of him in the dark. And I whispered, barely above a breath, "Are you still awake?" He didn't answer at first. Just kept breathing. Steady. Controlled. I waited, hand clenched in the sheets, eyes stinging in the dark. Then, finally, "I'm awake." His voice was soft. Not cold. But tired. "I didn't mean to blow up at dinner," I whispered. "I know," he said, almost too quickly. Like he'd rehearsed the forgiveness before I even asked for it. "You've been holding it in for a long time." We lay there in the dark, side by side, not touching. "I don't know how to explain what's been happening to me," I said. "I feel like I'm watching my life from the outside. I still love you, but I can't seem to get back to the part of me that wants everything we used to have." He didn't say anything for a while. Then, "I don't know how to want things I keep getting punished for wanting." That broke something in me. I rolled over to face him, and in the faint moonlight from the window, I saw the wet sheen in his eyes. "I never meant to punish you," I said, throat thick. I don't know who I am anymore when I'm with you. It's like I'm failing every time I try to be close." He looked at me then. Really looked. "Elise," he said. "I've spent years reaching for you. Years trying to be patient, hoping it was just a phase or hormones or exhaustion or anything I could help fix. But I can't keep chasing you through a fog I don't understand. I'm tired." I reached for his hand across the sheets. He didn't pull away, but he didn't move toward me either. A long, aching pause. Then he pulled his hand free gently and sat up, rubbing his face. "I'm gonna sleep on the couch tonight," he said quietly. "I need space to think." I nodded. "Okay." He stood. Walked to the door. Then paused and looked back at me. "You keep saying you still love me," he said. "But love isn't just grief for the way things used to be. It's the thing you do when it's hard. And I think you stopped doing it a long time ago." The door clicked shut behind him. The house was quiet for the next few weeks, but it was a new kind of quiet, the kind that follows a line being drawn. We didn't talk much. We co-parented. Functioned. Exchanged schedules and groceries and polite questions. But the marriage, the us part, it sat in a sealed box neither of us seemed brave enough to open again. Until one night, the kids were gone at a sleepover, and we found ourselves on the porch, both with mugs of tea in hand. The silence between us wasn't angry anymore. Just old. Worn. "I want to be honest," I said, surprising myself. "I think I've been waiting for you to save me from something I needed to face on my own." He looked at me, expression unreadable. "I lost myself somewhere between mothering and marriage," I said. "And I blamed you for the emptiness I didn't know how to fill." He nodded slowly, absorbing it. "You weren't the only one who disappeared, Elise. I stopped asking how you really were. I thought if I kept giving dinners, kisses, touches, eventually you'd come back." "I know," I said, tears welling. "I felt it. Every time. And I hated myself for not being able to respond the way you needed me to." He reached out then, not for my hand, but for my shoulder. Just a squeeze. Gentle. Familiar. A goodbye in the shape of comfort. "I'll always care about you," he said. And that's when I knew. It was over. Not with fire. Not with betrayal. But with time. With grief. With quiet truths finally said aloud. That night, we didn't fight. We didn't cry. We just stood in the living room, the silence humming between us, and I pressed my forehead to his chest one last time. He kissed the top of my head, soft, slow, like a memory he wasn't ready to let go of yet. Then he turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't call him back. I didn't know then what would happen next, only that someday, years down the line, I'd wonder why he still wouldn't speak to me. I'd reach out and feel the chill of a bridge too long abandoned to cross. But that night, I just stood there. Heart in my throat. Knowing I had lost something I once called home. Not all at once. But slowly. In every silence. In every unmet need. In every touch that never quite reached the soul. You want to know the truth? I used to think regret was like a wave, sudden, crashing, dramatic. But it's not. It's quieter than that. It's the way you pause before dialing a number you used to know by heart. It's seeing a certain kind of coffee in the grocery store and remembering how he took his, 2 sugars, no cream. It's driving past a school and wondering if he ever thinks about how we used to sit in the carpool lane, half asleep, laughing about nothing. My name is Elise. I'm 60 now. And 25 years ago, I walked out on my husband and our 5 children. I didn't leave in anger. There was no screaming match, no broken plates on the floor. It was more like resignation. I left with a suitcase and the belief that I still had a right to want things, to be wanted. To feel alive again. That part is important. I didn't leave because of the man I met, the one I ended up with. I left because I felt hollow, unseen, untouched in a way that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with being slowly erased in my own life. And you know what? For a while, I felt free. The affair partner, he made me feel desired again. He asked me questions no one had asked me in years. What music do you love? What's something you've always wanted to do? What do you dream about when you're alone? It was intoxicating. But here's what no one tells you when you follow desire at the cost of your foundation: desire fades. And when it does, you're left with the quiet weight of choices you can't undo. I see Daniel sometimes, or at least, I used to. At weddings. Grandkids' birthday parties. From a polite distance. He always nodded, always kept his smile polite, his eyes kind but distant. He never raised his voice. Never blamed me in public. He just disappeared from my life in the most dignified, devastating way possible. And it broke me more than the end of the marriage ever did. Because he was the first person who ever made me feel truly safe. And now, after all this time, he won't speak to me. Not in the way that matters. I used to tell myself he was being immature. That he was holding a grudge. That he should have moved on by now. But the truth? He did move on. He just didn't take me with him. And I think, no, I know, I've earned that silence. Because here's what I've learned about relationships, about desire, about myself. You can crave affection so badly that you convince yourself it's the same thing as connection. You can be loved deeply and still feel alone if you don't speak your own truth. And you can destroy something beautiful not because you're cruel, but because you're afraid. Afraid of aging. Afraid of fading. Afraid of admitting that you don't know how to love yourself anymore. I loved Daniel. And in some strange way, I still do. Not romantically. Not even as a partner. But as the man who gave me his best years, his best tries, and a kind of loyalty I didn't know how to receive until it was gone. The man who raised our children with steadiness even when I was the storm. The man who, even now, remains one of the most emotionally generous people I've ever known, even in silence. Sometimes I wonder if he ever lies awake at night thinking of me. And then I hope he doesn't. I hope he's at peace. Because if I'm being honest, I'm still searching for mine. You might think this story is about infidelity, or regret, or karma. But to me, it's about blindness, how we fail to see the quiet, necessary work of intimacy. The holding of hands when nothing's exciting. The late-night cups of tea after another argument. The gentle choosing of each other, again and again, even when the fire is dim. I thought love was passion. But now I know, real love is presence. And I left someone who had stayed. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect to be understood. But if you're listening, if you're standing at the edge of something like I once did, longing, aching, ready to run, I beg you, pause. Talk. Ask yourself what you're really missing. And if it's something that could still be found, if only you stayed. Because once you walk away, some doors don't close with a slam. They close with a whisper. And you won't hear the final click until it's far, far too late.